Hello, everyone, and welcome to ITLS Academy Empower the Youth. So, today in this lecture, we will going to understand the food hazards, that is, chemical and physical. So, we already know that food hazards are of different kinds. We have already discussed the biological hazards, and today we will going to discuss the chemical and physical hazards. So, these chemical and physical hazards are very common in any food, and it leads to a foodborne illness or different kinds of food related disease. And apart from the food related disease or the foodborne illness, it also may cause a food that is unacceptable for human consumption. For example, if there is a food and a piece of different kinds of drops of detergent get incorporated in the food, it will deteriorate the quality of the food. Means we cannot use a food that has a detergent or any cleaning agent inside the food. We cannot have that food, right? So it is very important for a food to have a best quality, to have a good quality, and there should be no physical, chemical, or any biological and even the microbiological hazards. So, before understanding the detail of what are physical hazards and chemical hazard, let us again take a revision of what is a hazard. So, a food safety hazard, it is a biological, it is a chemical, and it is a physical agent, or you can say it is a condition of food with the potential to cause harm or an adverse health effect at the time of consumption. So, whenever a food undergoes to a condition where it can cause harm to a human, or it can adverse the health condition of a humans, when a human consume that particular food, so that is a hazard. Means it has a food hazards is a condition, or you can say it is a type of a biological, physical, or a chemical agent that has a potential, that has a capability to cause harm or to deteriorate the health of a person at a time of consumption, and it leads to a different foodborne diseases. So what is a control measure? So any action or any activity or any step that is taken to that can taken to prevent, or you can say eliminate or reduce a significant of hazard, that is known as a control measure. Means if a person and if a food has a physical hazard, so what is a preventive measure you can take to avoid a physical hazard in a particular food item? What is a significant step, or of what is the significant way to reduce a significant type of a hazard? So it is very important to avoid these types of hazards so that it cannot adverse the health of a human, or it cannot cause any harm to human. So again, hazard is divided into three categories: physical, chemical, biological, and one is a microbiological, that is somewhat similar to biological. Now, what is a physical hazard? So any extraneous object, or you can say any foreign matter in food item which may cause illness or injury to a person at the time of consumption is known as physical hazard. So since the name suggests physical, okay, so it cannot have, it cannot include, or it cannot be a type of a hazard that is caused by any microorganism or by any chemical. So what are physical? For example, stems in blueberries, or you can say in a food that has the presence of grass fragments, or a food that has a presence of any type of an accidental a nail, a piece of nail in it, or a food that can has any type of aluminium thing in it, or any type of small stone are there, it maybe it has that. So that includes the physical hazard. Or any food that has a hair of a animal, then that is a physical hazard. So physical hazards, they are divided into two categories: avoidable and unavoidable. Avoidables are those that you can avoid, that yes, you can avoid those hazards, so they are अवॉइडेबल. एंड अनअवॉइडेबल आर जिसको आप अवॉइड नहीं कर सकते हो, सो दे आर नोन एज फिजिकल hazard, that is unavoidable. So unavoidables occurs in food as a byproduct. For example, you purchase blueberries from the markets, and blueberries are so expensive in India because it because their harvesting is quite expensive, and it is quite expensive means 250 grams of blueberries cost about 378 rupees in India. Okay, I'm just talking about a particular region, and I don't know about the south, but yes, it's quite expensive. So if the blueberries have stems, then of course it will leads to the increase in the weight, and of course your product, you will get a less product, means it will lead to a quantitative effect on blueberries weight. So again, it is unavoidable, means stems in blueberries are unavoidable, but if it is there, so it leads to a physical hazard. Okay, apart from that, the avoidable means occurs in food due to the absence of proper GMPs. Every food industries, since from the very starting of the food safety lectures, I always mention in my lecture that every food industries should abide by the GMP's guidelines, because these GMP's guidelines are very important whenever it is concerned with the safety of food. So if any physical hazards are there, or if physical hazards are there that occurs in food due to the absence of a proper GMPs, then it leads to avoidable. An example, glass fragments. Okay, so it is avoidable. But again, for every food industries, if a food industries wants to have a good impact on the society, or in customers mind, so it is very important for industries to have a GMP's guidelines, to abide by the GMP's guidelines, so that a food industries can avoid such type of physical hazards or any hazards. So here are some common physical hazards and their sources. For example, a food, if a food has a glass material, means a bottle, jar, light fixtures, utensils. Sometimes in food you see there is a broken glass particle inside the food, so that is a type of a physical hazard, because if you swallow that glass inside, if you swallow that food item that has a glass, so it will deteriorate your health. Okay, it will cause you a throat injuries and sometimes the stomach injuries. So it is very important to avoid those type of food, and yes, industries should take a very preventive measure to avoid any type of physical hazard. Then is the wood. So sometimes in food there is a wood particles that is present in the food. So for example, field, pallet, box, buildings. Then comes the stone. Stones includes building, fields. Okay, means if a food is having any source of material that is a stone, even the bullet, needles. So these are certain different types of physical hazards. One thing I would like to mention here is about the jewelry. That is the reason whenever a person is working in an industry, so it is always avoidable. So it is where, so whenever a person is working in an industry, so it is said that a person should avoid any sort of jewelries, because sometimes there is a mishandling of a food, or if there is any jewelry that comes in contact with the food, so it will lead to the deterioration of food quality. So it is very important to avoid the jewelries while working in the industries. So yes, so these are some common physical hazards and their sources. So now coming to the next, that is injury risk of physical hazards. So, the first is the risk, injury, commodity, and the size of physical hazards. So, In this, we will see that what is the risk injury of a physical hazard. So it is divided into three categories, as you can see: the high, moderate, and low. If we talk about the high, then it is highly injurious for a infant food and for the beverages. If the size of the physical hazard is including any small particles is more than 2 is less than 2 so it is having a serious risk hazard. Again, with the case of beverage, also 2 or larger size in any of the dimension doesn't have any role in this, so it will again deteriorate the quality of the beverages and it has a very high injury risk. Then similar case is with the moderate, that all other foods means except the infant food and the beverages that has a dimension of 2 or larger in size in any one of the dimension, then it will lead to a moderate risk. And yes, it is for all the food, but it do not include the infant or the beverage. And then all the food except the infant food that has a low injury risk, that is 2 in size in all dimensions. So again, this is the injury risk of physical hazards. Now comes the control measures of physical hazard, means how you can control the physical hazard. So control is divided into again two categories: the prevention and find and remove. First one is how you can prevent the physical hazard, means what are the preventive measure you take to prevent physical hazard. So the first one is GMPs, GAPs, HACCP. Okay, so again, these GMPs, GAPs has up it is a regulatory aspects, and it play a very major role whenever any quality of food is concerned. If any industry is manufacturing the food and it is not abiding by GMPs guidelines or HACCP guidelines or FDA guidelines, so it will lead to a serious threat. And it is advisable to for every industries that they should always follow the GMPs guidelines. So what are GMPs? GMPs is a good manufacturing practices in which it includes all the preventive and control measure to avoid any sort of risk that is associated with the food. Okay, so it is very important. So in this way you can prevent the physical hazard. Similar case is with GAPs and HACCP, and we all know that this HACCP or GMPs, it is a it is followed worldwide, and every countries whether it's US or China or any other food industry country, so they are following GMPs and HACCP. So it is not always the case that it is the India, but it is accepted worldwide and nationwide also. So it is very important for every industries to follow and abide by these guidelines. Similar case is the HACCP. HACCP is a hazard analysis critical control point, and this is again being accepted by every industries or food industries, whether it's a food, pharma, or cosmetic industries, means any industries that is manufacturing a product for the usage of a human or a animal. So every industries should follow the HACCP, GMPs, GAPs guidelines, FDA guidelines, and it is again, I'm repeating, it is accepted worldwide. Now now next says identification of raw materials, ingredient, packaging material processes are at high risk of contamination. So again, how raw material is at the high risk? See, from where you have purchased the raw material is one of the question, because if the vendor who is selling the raw material is having a high quality of raw materials, then it's okay. But if a vendor is not having a high quality of raw material, so it will leads to the deterioration of the further of the food product. So the raw material should be of high quality. The vendor should be authorized, should have a proper supply of raw materials. Then comes your ingredients. So what, and yes, again, the storage area where the raw material is actually stored is one of the key factor for the identification, for the contamination. Means the area where the raw material is stored should be clean, should be free from any sources of contamination. Similar case is the ingredients, what all the ingredients are there in the food, so it again play a very important and major role in the contamination. So in ingredients what are used in the food should be of high quality, should be free from any sources of contamination. Packaging material, how packaging material are at the higher risk of contamination, because again material play a very important role. Means what kind of packaging you are using, what who is the vendor who is supplying the packaging material, whether the packaging material is abiding all the guidelines or not. Okay, so that is the thing. If a packaging material is not following all the GMPs as well as other regulatory guidelines, so again it will lead to the risk. And yes, it will deteriorate the quality of the food. And in simple words, this type of thing are at the higher risk of contamination. Then comes the proper maintenance of building facilities, ground and processing plants and equipment. So what all the equipments are used should be of high quality, and the building or the premises of the industries should be maintained very properly. All the facilities should be there. Facilities includes the water treatment plant. It includes the latest machineries of equipments, later machineries should be there, so that and there should be no hinder in the processing of food or in the manufacturing of food. Similar case is with the processing plant. Okay, the equipments, latest technologies of the equipment should be used, and the equipment should be free from any sources of contamination. Before and after use, every utensils or equipment should be washed properly. And then comes the eliminate the potential sources of physical hazard within establishment. If by chance there is a physical hazard that is there in a food, so what should be the preventive measure or the first step to ensure that yes, the hazard is being eliminated from the food. Then comes the employee training. Employee training is again an important thing, because employee is the person who is directly handling the food. So proper training of employee should be there. Okay, employee should have knowledge of every bit and every steps of the processing of the food. Now comes to find and remove. Now the second control measure of the physical hazard is to find and to remove. Once you find the thing, once you find any hazard, and then after that how you can take steps to remove that. For example, the first is the physical exclusion of hazard. For example, screen filters and sieves should be used. Okay, because different types of physical hazards or foreign physical bodies can be removed by using filters, can be removed using screens or sieve, etc. Effective detection and an elimination system should be there. Proper equipment design, selection, calibration and maintenance should be there. Effective facility maintenance, online visual inspection. The very important is that every step, okay, I'm talking about at every step there should be a close monitoring thing. And if by chance if there is a hazard, as soon as you saw an hazard, you quickly take a preventive measure and remove that, so that in further step it cannot indulge in a further step, वो आगे ना जा पाए, इसलिए on the spot you should remove that physical hazard. There are other detection method that includes to detect the physical hazards are x-rays machines should be there in the industries. The optical system should be there, magnetic system, because physical hazard may include any metal substance also. So magnets should be there so that they can attract any sort of metal that is there in the food. Then screening assessment of raw materials, then how you screen the end product, because at the end if you see, yes, at every step there is no hazard, but final product screening is very important, just to ensure yes at the final step screening there is no such fault, there is no such hazards. Now comes the next, that is a chemical hazard. So chemical hazard says that any chemical contaminant or natural occurring substances in food that can cause harm to human health when present over the recommended level, it's the physical, is the chemical hazard. So already told you that any chemical contaminant means any chemical hazards or any naturally occurring substances, okay, that has a chemical contamination or chemical, yes, so if it is present in food, so it will cause harm to the health of a person who is consuming that once one when present over the recommended level. Okay, again, the chemical hazards are divided into three categories. One is the naturally occurring, second is intentionally added, and the third is unintentionally added. Okay, now, naturally occurring says that some chemical hazards are naturally occurring, that is present in food. So, example, toxin plant components. Such substances are often prohibited in foods beyond a certain level. So, naturally occurring means they are present naturally. You are nowhere that you can avoid that. Yes, but you can avoid their levels. Means, for example, there are certain chemicals, okay, that are present in the food and they are present naturally. There is no human interference, they are present naturally, so they are known as naturally occurring chemical hazards. Okay, such substances, when they are found naturally, so they are often prohibited, they are stopped in food beyond a certain level. Means certain level taki these chemical hazards are not dangerous, but yes, beyond a certain level they can cause a serious health impact, they can impact the health condition, so they are prohibited in that case. So these hazards are often also classified as the biological hazards sometimes. Then they are in sometimes they are intentionally added to a food. Why? Sometimes these chemical hazards, they are used by the industries to maintain the food freshness, to enhance their flavor, to enhance the aroma of the food, and to enhance the color. So in this case, beyond a certain level, they can deteriorate the quality of the food. So they are intentionally, you want that chemical to be added inside your food, so to increase the freshness, flavor, aroma of the food, even the shelf life, sometimes even the color of the food. So they are known as intentionally, when you are adding that inside the food purposely. For example, so, direct additives are there, in which you add additives to the food directly. There are some indirect, direct food additives. So, okay, what are direct additives? So, direct additives includes your preservations techniques, like different kinds of preservatives are there. For example, sodium benzoates, sulfating agent, nitrate. So, these are some preservatives that helps the food, that helps food to preserve, means to avoid any sort of contaminations. Then it is your nutritional additives are there, niacin, retinols are there, just to enhance the nutritional quality of the food by adding the um, additives. Then is your color additives to enhance the color of the food. For example, if there is a food, that if you want a food to have a good color, to enhance its color, so different color additives are there to enhance the color quality of the food. Okay, then comes the indirect food additives, like whenever you want to add additives but not directly, but you want to add indirect way. For different kinds of adhesives are there, polymers are there, so that includes the indirect food additives. Now, what are the sources and why a hazard? Like, why you include a food coloring into a hazard, why you are saying yes, this food coloring is not good, or these preservatives are not good, or these nutritional supplement is not good. Because anyways they are used, different types of preservation techniques are there, preservatives are used to enhance the shelf life of the food, okay, to avoid the food of in having any types of contaminants. So why it is again been said that yes, they are hazards? So food coloring, so food coloring, they can produce an adverse reaction in sensitive people. Okay, there are people that has that are very sensitive to anything. Okay, so it includes the food coloring. Sometimes an excessive food coloring or any types of food coloring, it can adverse the reaction in the sensitive people. Similar cases with the preservatives. Sometimes preservative, the excess use of preservative, it can be toxin in high concentration. Whenever preservatives are used in a high concentration, so they can be a they can lead to a very toxic condition inside the food. They can cause an intolerant reaction in sensitive people. So majorly sensitive peoples are much at risk, because they cannot you can say सहन नहीं कर पाते हैं that such a type of additional thing. Similar cases with the nutritional supplement. So these nutritional supplement, they can be toxic in high concentration. So anything, so anything at high concentration can leads to deterioration or hazards in the food. Now when something is unintentionally added, like agriculture chemicals are there, means you don't have any intention to add that type of hazards or chemicals, sorry. So it they are intentional unintentionally added, so they can be added or occur in the food due to the agricultural chemicals, like pesticides are there, fungicides are there, herbicides are there, fertilizer, antibiotics, growth hormones. So they can also incorporate into inside the food. Similar case is with the cleaning chemicals. For example, acids are there, caustic sodas are there, maintenance chemicals are there. For example, lubricants, packaging materials. Already told you, like tin, equipments component like copper pipe fitting. So these are certain that is unintentionally added inside the food, but yes, they can also deteriorate the quality of the food, and these are certain one of the chemical hazards that are there in the food. So excesses of anything can leads to a healthy condition, can impact a human health. So it is very important to avoid every kinds of hazard at the first. These are certain sources, like agriculture chemicals are there. And why it is a hazard? If improperly applied, some can be equally toxic or may cause a long-term health effect. Similar with the cleaning chemicals, equipment component, maintenance chemical, and packaging materials. So every, whether it's a cleaning chemical, let's say, so it can cause a cleaning chemical burn if present in the food at a very high level. So if let's suppose any cleaning chemicals, if it present at a very high level, so what it will do, it can cause a chemical burn. Similar is the equipment component, means acidic food, they can cause a leaching of a heavy metal from the pipes and joint. For example, copper and lead. So there could be a reaction that can occur, and it will deteriorate the quality of the food. Maintenance of chemicals, some chemicals are not approved for a food use, or they may be toxic, and if you use those type of chemicals inside the food, so it will again can cause hazard in the food. So you should always avoid those chemicals that are not approved. Then is the packaging materials. For example, a high nitrate levels in the food. Whenever a food is having a high nitrate level, so they can causes an excessive detaining of uncoated can, and can result in excessive level of tin in the food, and that is a hazard. So that's all about the lecture. I hope you have understood the lecture. If you have any queries, any questions, so you can leave your queries in the comment section below. In the next lecture, I'll be answering the queries. Follow ITLS Academy. This is our website, that is www.itlsacademy.com. This is our helpline number, that is 7080833450. You can simply call on this number and get updated. Thank you for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe ITLS Academy. And yes, don't forget to press the bell icon to get more lectures from ITLS Academy. Thank you once again.